Namaskar. A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Canada India Foundation's 23rd session of our virtual webinar speaker series on Ayurveda. My name is Satish Thakkar, Chair of Canada India Foundation, and we have our national convener, Mr. Ritesh Malik, and Dr. Harish Verma, President of Canadian Ayurvedic Practitioners Association with us this morning. Our special guest of this morning is Ms. Shipra Verma, Chief Electoral Officer from Manitoba. Ms. Verma, a very warm welcome and thank you for joining. Friends, our expert speaker of this morning is Dr. Ranjit Nimbalkar. He will appraise us on Ayurvedic management of breast cancer and various other types of cancer. Welcome, Dr. Nimbalkar, and thank you for joining as well. Friends, as per the definition of Canadian Cancer Society, breast cancer starts in the cells of the breast. A cancerous tumor is a group of cancer cells that can grow into and destroy nearby tissues. It can also spread to other parts of the body. Female gender has the highest breast cancer risk, but approximately 0.5 to 1% of the breast cancers occur in men as well. The treatment of breast cancer in men follows the same principles of management as for the woman. Breast cancer is the most common cancer among Canadian women. It is the second leading cause of death from cancer in Canadian women. As per estimated data of Canadian Cancer Society, in 2020, 27,400 women in Canada were diagnosed with breast cancer, and this represents 25% of all new cancer cases in women in 2020. 5,100 women died from breast cancer, and this represents 13% of all cancer death in women in 2020. On average, 75 Canadian women is diagnosed with breast cancer and 14 die from it every single day. Breast cancer has become the most common cancer globally as of 2021, accounting for 12% of all new annual cancer cases worldwide, according to World Health Organization. And in 2020, there were 2.3 million women diagnosed with breast cancer and 685,000 deaths globally. As of the end of 2020, there were 7.8 million women alive who were diagnosed with breast cancer in the past 5 years, making it the world's most prevalent cancer. Survival of breast cancer for the last at least 5 years after diagnosis ranges from more than 90% in high-income countries like Canada to 66% in India and 40% in South Africa. Early detection and treatment have proven very successful. Friends, the objective of today's webinar is to understand that how our over 6,000-year-old Ayurveda as an effective alternative healthcare system can provide remedy, preventative measures for various kinds and types of cancer, and especially the breast cancer. This Ayurvedic lecture series is in partnership with Canadian Ayurvedic Practitioners Association, Consul General of India in Toronto, and Vedic Spiritual Heritage Foundation. Before we begin, let me invite our national convener, Mr. Ritesh Malik, to introduce our special guest, Ms. Shipra Verma. Ritesh, over to you.
Thank you, Satish ji. Namaste, everyone, and a very happy Raksha Bandhan to all of you. Our sister and distinguished guest today, Ms. Shipra Verma, was appointed as Chief Electoral Officer of Manitoba in 2013 by the unanimous recommendation of the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs. Since joining Elections Manitoba in 2004, Ms. Verma has gained electoral experience in all areas of the organization, overseeing 4 general elections and substantial legislative, technical, and administrative changes to the electoral process. In addition to successfully leading, Ms. Verma has also participated in international election observer programs in the USA, Ukraine, Russia, and India. She's active on the Council on Government Ethics Laws, serving on its steering committee from 2016 to 2019 and as president in 2018. She is currently chair of the Canadian Society for Election Officials Training and a member of the steering committee of the Secretariat for Electoral Coordination. A chartered professional accountant with credentials in Canada, United States, and India, Ms. Verma has over 20 years of experience consisting of election administration, public accounting, and professional services. She is currently serving on the board of the Chartered Professional Accountants Manitoba and as a lay counselor for the Council of Engineers Geoscientists Manitoba. Ms. Verma is an active member and volunteer in the Manitoba community, serving with many organizations such as the Hindu Society of Manitoba and India Association of Manitoba to share Indian culture and traditions. Welcome, Ms. Verma. Over to you.
Ms. Verma, if you could kindly unmute yourself.
Namaste and good morning, everyone, and happy Raksha Bandhan to all of you. Thank you for this introduction and kind invitation to be associated with this educational campaign. It gives me great pleasure to be part of this speaker series initiated by your esteemed organization in association with the Canadian Ayurveda Practitioners Association, the Vedic Spiritual Heritage Foundation, along with the support of the Consul General Office in Toronto. Well, Ayurveda is a medicine system we all have heard about since our childhood. I believe knowingly or unknowingly, we have benefited from it through our cooking or as our parents or grandparents have given us home remedies for common ailments or to boost immunity, which were based on Ayurveda. The fact that the system of Indian medicine has survived and flourished over the past 6,000 years in itself speaks volumes of its benefits and effectiveness. Its holistic approach of connecting mind, body, spirits, and nature by using methods of yoga, meditation, diet, following seasonal rhythms, and a range of purification and rejuvenation therapies has helped millions of people over the years. I'm very interested in hearing about today's topic, Ayurvedic Management of Breast Cancer by Dr. Ranjit Nimbalkar. This topic is very close to my heart as my own mother succumbed to breast cancer at a young age. As it has been earlier stated, the statistics of breast cancer in the world, the second leading cause of death from cancer in Canadian women, and an estimation that 1 in 8 women can develop breast cancer over the course of their lifetime. These statistics and reality are very alarming. Over the years, extensive research has been conducted, and if Ayurveda can demonstrate evidence-based research to support the treatment, then it would definitely be a source of hope for many. I hope this initiative of Canada India Foundation leads to more awareness within our community. Early detection and treatment can help in reducing the mortality rate from this deadly disease. For this, public education about the signs and symptoms is required to create awareness among women. We all should work towards creating a safe environment for women to talk, share their concerns, and remove the taboo or embarrassment which they may feel in discussing their health concern. All this will help in promoting early detection when breast cancer is detected. To combat cancer, appropriate medical treatment is required, along with the support of family, friends, and community, the right diet, and mental strength. This is necessary during the treatment and for a successful post-cancer recovery period too. Please note that there is a reason why cancer survivors are called survivors, because they're not victims, as it takes courage, faith, and commitment to deal with this disease. I sincerely hope the holistic approach used by Ayurveda can complement the modern medicine in finding a cure for cancer. I look forward to learning more from Dr. Nimbalkar and thank the Canada India Foundation once again for their initiative under the leadership of Mr. Thakkar, Mr. Malik, and Vaidya Verma. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Parma, for sharing your thoughts and sparing time today. I know it's a very auspicious occasion and your schedule must be very busy, but we sincerely thank you for sharing your very insightful thoughts and supporting the initiative. Now, friends, it gives me a great pleasure and privilege to invite our speaker of this morning, Dr. Ranjit Nimbalkar. He has done his MD in Ayurveda from Pune University and PhD from Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, Nasik in Ayurveda Rog Nidan. He has also done postgraduate diploma in clinical research from ICRI Mumbai. He's having over 21 years of teaching experience and over 2 decades of research experience in cancer research at Ayurveda Hospital Research Center, Wagholi in Pune. He has also worked as an ICU registrar at Sanjeevan Hospital, Pune. Dr. Nimbalkar specializes in cancer, PCOS, autoimmunity, obesity, and psoriasis. Very warm welcome, Dr. Nimbalkar, and we look forward to your presentation. Over to you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the kind words of introduction. And at the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to present my views in front of all this august audience on this very reputed forum, we can say. So I'm really honored to share my views here. Today is Raksha Bandhan and we know we have to protect our sisters on this auspicious day. It's a symbol of that. So this breast carcinoma is a disease from which we actually need to save our sisters worldwide. So I think this right subject at the right date has occurred today. So before starting our presentation, I would like to salute all my gurus because of whom I am here and I'm able to do some little work, we can say. It is not very huge, it's just the beginning. But whatever inputs given by my gurus, they have really helped me and I'm trying to help the cancer patients through Ayurveda. So as we know, our topic today is understanding breast carcinoma from Ayurveda perspective and its treatment as well as prevention. So let me share my screen and we will start. So is it visible? I hope the screen is visible and I am audible as well.
Yes, doctor. Yes, doctor.
Okay. Visible. So let us start with our presentation. It's understanding breast carcinomas from Ayurveda perspective, Ayurveda treatment. It will be just a bird's eye view, I would say. It will be just a formal introduction and just an overview of what is breast cancer as well as what is Ayurveda and how they too can be used with each other. So what will be the plan of our lecture? It will be a few compartments and we'll try to join them at the end. Excuse me, somebody's mic is on, I think. Kindly switch off, it will be better. Thank you so much. So plan will be, initially we will have a modern overview of a cancer as a whole. We'll just take a small idea, we know all, but it's a small revision we can say. Then understanding about the breast cancer, how breast cancer is understood by modern medicine. Then how all those things are interpreted from Ayurveda perspective, because this breast cancer or any cancer is not directly mentioned in Ayurveda. This is more a disease of new times. Yes, there definitely roots are there in our science, but details we need to take from modern medicine and we need to treat the patient accordingly. Then what are the treatment principles depending on Ayurveda fundamentals? And lastly, the preventive oncology part will be there. For that, early diagnosis, self-examination method, how to self-examine, then drug, diet, lifestyle recommendation. So our lecture will go in this fashion. First two parts more related to modern medicine, second two parts more related to Ayurveda. So for common people, I have tried to make them as easy as possible. And lastly, the final part is especially for common people and doctors, Vaidyas, everyone. So let us start with begin with the very beginning. This is the basic question. What is cancer? We all know. What is it? It is uncontrolled growth of cells. This we all know. Where the important part is the daughter cell doesn't resemble the mother cell. In normal condition, daughter cell and mother cells are similar, but in cancer there is growth. At the same time, daughter cells and mother cells are different. So it is called as, yes, the medical people definitely know, this is called as dysplasia. And dysplasia is the very beginning of cancer. Now we will try to explain in a pictorial manner. We can see that this is a normal tissue, all cells very well placed and extremely normal. This is hyperplasia where only number is increased, but the cells are similar. Whereas this is dysplasia where you can see number is also increased and the cells are different as compared to the mother cell. So this is called as dysplasia. If this progresses, it will lead to benign tumor, or we can say harmless tumor or less harmful tumor. And this is a malignant or cancerous tumor. So this is a pictorial presentation. Now, what are the types? Cancer is very broad term. There are many types and subtypes as per organs, but there are basic 4 types of cancer depending upon the tissue of origination. If epithelium is the original tissue, it will be called as carcinoma. Again, there are 2 subtypes, squamous cell and adenocarcinoma, coming from glandular epithelium. Then sarcoma is for mesenchymal tissue, means connective tissues. Leukemia comes from white blood cells and lymphoma comes from lymph nodes. Now here you can see OMA, 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 OMA and OMA. Whenever there is OMA at the end, it means tumor. Now in leukemia there is no tumor. So it is called as non-solid tumor, and of course there is no OMA over there. So this is a general information. Now let's come to breast cancer. Now again, breast cancer, there are again different things. We'll have just a look on the anatomy and physiology of breast. So this is a total picture of breast tissue and this is a cut section. So even if we call it as a one organ called breast, but there are many components in that. You can see there is a chest wall muscle, then ducts, areola, nipple, lobules, stroma, blood vessels. Many things are there. And each and every part from this can turn into malignancy. All will be called as, technically all will be called as breast cancers, but still they are totally biologically different entities, totally different. Just like say for example India, we all are Indians, means one from Rajasthan, one from Punjab, one from Maharashtra, one from Kerala, one from Bengal, one from Assam. All are Indians, but still they are totally different. Their faiths are different, diet is different, then racial origin may be sometimes different, food habits are different, totally different, but still they are all Indians. Similarly, we are all Indians, we can say, and this similarly breast cancer, the origin is different, but collectively they will be called as breast cancer. So initial tissue is different, behavior is different, natural history is different, and outcome is totally different. So instead of merely saying breast cancer, we need to specify which cancer is it. Now this is a broad classification depending upon the organs of origin. If it comes from the ducts, it will be called as adenocarcinoma in the duct. If it comes from the milk glands or lobule, it will be called as cancer of gland. If it comes from stroma, it will be called as phylloid tumor. If it comes from blood vessels, it will be called as angiosarcoma. If it comes from soft tissue, it will be called as sarcoma. Then if from lymph node in the breast, it will be called as lymphoma. And if it comes from nipple, it will be called as Paget's disease of the nipple. All these are breast cancers. So we need to mention it correctly, which cancer you want to deal with. So clinically important presentations are ductal and lobular. Around 80 to 90% of breast cancers are of these 2 types. They have again subtypes. This ductal carcinoma DCIS is called as ductal carcinoma in situ, where tumor is there, but it has not invaded yet the basement membrane. Whereas if it has invaded, it will be called as IDC or invasive ductal carcinoma. Then again there are subtypes. We are going to see that. Then lobular, it is called as LCIS, lobular carcinoma in situ, and if it is invading, then it will be called as invasive lobular carcinoma. So these four are the major subtypes of any breast cancer. Now hormone receptor is a different thing which is especially important in breast cancer. It is not, this type of subtypes are not seen in any other cancers of any other organ, we can say. The receptors are certain proteins, those offer seats for attachment of hormones on that malignant cell. So ER is estrogen receptor, progesterone receptor, PR and HER2/neu are the hormone receptors which have been identified till date. HER2 is human endodermal receptor type 2. So if these receptors are present, it is called as ERPR HER2 positive. If absent, it will be called as negative. So first subtypes DCIS, IDC, again subtypes of that ERPR positive or negative and so on. What is the role of estrogen here? This estrogen, we know it is very much promoting for puberty, menstruation and pregnancy. So it's a purely female hormone. And once a pre-malignant or malignant cell, if this receptor is present on those cells, then estrogen will help or increase their or promote their proliferation and the number of cells will increase. So estrogen is the principal promoter of breast cancer in ERPR positive type of cancer. So for that again hormone therapy, some drugs are available, some are receptor blockers and some are aromatic inhibitors. So if ERPR is positive, then these drugs can be given additionally so that prognosis of this type of cancer is comparatively better. Now this HER2 we already seen, human epidermal growth factor receptor. So this is a protein produced in some types of breast cancer cells in large volume, and it again promotes the breast cancer. So if this HER2 is positive, then there is again some special treatment immunotherapy called as trastuzumab. It can be given to such type of breast cancer only if HER2 is positive. Now classification, permutation of combination of ERPR and HER2. So most of the patients ERPR is positive and HER2 is negative, around 50 to 65. ERPR may be positive, may be negative, but HER2 is positive, here 20%, and all are negative, triple negative breast cancer, TNBC. So everything is negative, it is around 15%. Now ER positive cancers more in elderly women and ER negative, HER2 positive found in younger women. This is the observation as on today. Now this is a last class of breast cancer. We have already seen triple negative breast cancer. They are very much aggressive, grow and spread fast. They are little bit poorer prognosis, we can say, difficult to treat because there are limited treatment options. There is no hormone blockers nor trastuzumab. So there are limited treatment options. They are related with BRCA1 gene expression. So what is this BRCA1? We are also going to see in short. So they really need very careful monitoring and treatment. They are considered as one stage above of the normal. If a ERPR positive cancer with all cell structures similar and ERPR negative cancer with all cell structures similar. So it will be, if ERPR positive is stage 2, TNBC will be considered as stage 3. So it is one stage ahead of positive cancer. Now these BRCA1 and BRCA2 are the major known susceptibility genes or tumor suppressor genes. BRCA is BR is breast, CA is cancer, breast cancer 1 and breast cancer 2. There are few more TP3 or CHEK2, but if there are mutation in this tumor suppressor gene, what is a tumor suppressor gene? It's a bodily mechanism to get rid of the tumor which is getting developed. But because of mutation, now this function is not going on properly and the cancer develops. So this is here written is remember somebody. If somebody is BRCA1 and BRCA2 positive, so it's a familial breast cancer. I think most of us know the famous Hollywood actress Angelina Jolie. She underwent mastectomy to remove this risk of breast cancer because she was positive, and because of her, actually this subject became a risk factor for male breast cancer and ovarian cancer. Now yes, male breast cancer can also occur in male. Of course, incidence is very low, 1%. Risk factor are same as females, and most of the times it is ER positive cancer. Generally, it's only a palpable subareolar mass. Why is it so? Because in males, all these lobes or ducts, they lie just below the nipple and areola. So you can see, so this is a male breast cancer only below the limited only to the areola tissue. It doesn't spread all over the chest as seen in the women. What is the epidemiology? So we already have discussed is the most common non-skin malignancy. It's an external organ. This is very painful thing. It's an external organ. It can be palpated by the patient or even by the doctor, but still it is a second highest mortality only after lung carcinoma. Generally, it's rare below 25 years of age and rapidly incidence increases after 30 years of age. Now, who are at more risk? This is also important. Of course, female gender, 99% cases are female, 1% male, we have seen. Then positive hereditary factors, we have again seen BRCA1, BRCA2. More exposure to estrogen due to any cause, and environmental and lifestyle hazards are the risk factors. So these women are more vulnerable for getting this type of cancer. So first degree relatives with breast cancer, 15 to 20% more risk is there. Racially non-Hispanic white women are more vulnerable. Age more than 30 is increasing risk, highest at 70 to 80 years of age. Then early menarche, age less than 11, or late menopause after 48 or 50 years. It is related to estrogen exposure, more estrogen exposure. Then high age at first birth. If the first pregnancy is after 28 to 30 years, then the lady has little more risk of developing breast cancer in the future. If there is any history of benign breast disease in the past, like fibroadenoma, even if it is operated, the lady is at more risk. Estrogen exposure we have already seen, but medically, if menopausal HRT has been taken, postmenopausal hormonal therapy it is taken, then or hormone replacement therapy, so it is at more risk. Breast density, if the breast is more dense, then higher is the risk because it is difficult to identify the tumor to that woman. Then radiation exposure, excessive X-rays or previous radiation therapy for some other cancer will increase the risk. Then carcinoma of other breast or endometrium is also a risk factor. Alcohol consumption again is a risk factor. Many times it is said male and female are same. So male are taking alcohol, then why not women? But I personally believe the equality should be, women should say that we are not drinking alcohol, so male should also not drink. So that is a good type of equality that we should need to encourage. Then breastfeeding, if lesser is the breastfeeding, more is the risk. Obesity is especially a risk factor in a postmenopausal cancer because fat tissue or adipose tissue, it also secretes estrogen and it leads to more estrogen exposure. So it is especially in postmenopausal cancer. As we have seen, elderly women have ERPR positive cancer. So obesity is a more risk factor there. Now grading and staging, what is many times we say high stage or late stage cancer or high grade. So grade is microscopic. In dysplasia, we have seen daughter cell doesn't resemble the mother cell. So the degree of non-resemblance is called as grade. Lesser the resemblance, more is the grade, and vice versa. And stage is clinical or pathological, means how the cancer has progressed to other tissues or lymph node and so on. Now grading, there are three types of grade: well differentiated, moderately differentiated, and poorly differentiated. This is, I think, very much self-explanatory. We have already talked about it. And staging, again, this is American Joint Committee of Cancer. They have declared this staging. Sometimes they are reviewing and some here and there is there. But you can see this is tumor, node, and metastasis. What is the size of tumor? Increased size of tumor, you will see the stage is increasing. Number of nodes, involvement is more, stage will be increased. And if metastasis is there, then whatever may be the tumor size or lymph node involvement, it is called as stage 4. So metastasis is very important. If metastasis is present, cancer is stage 4 and of course difficult to treat. Then what are the signs and symptoms? New lump and palpable mass, which is felt by the woman or the treating or examining doctor. Then it is generally painless, hard and irregular. Swelling may be there all over the breast. Then skin dimpling because of the tumor. There can be negative pressure in other part of the breast and there can be sort of dimpling. Then breast or nipple pain can be there. Nipple retraction is very common. Then dry flaking or thickened skin is also seen in many patients. Just like a orange peel, the skin of the orange fruit, the breast tissue looks like that. So it is very severe and alarming type of symptom it is considered. Then swollen lymph node, this is also one more sign and symptom. How to define the prognosis of the patient of that particular cancer, or prediction that how much the patient will be alive or good to cure or not. So there are two important factors. What is the extent of tumor? It is called as tumor burden. Whether it is invasive or non-invasive. If it has invaded, prognosis is bad. Distant metastasis, if the distant organ is involved, the cancer becomes difficult to treat. If lymph nodes, more and more lymph nodes are involved, then it becomes difficult. Tumor size, larger the size, obviously, tumor load or tumor burden is more, so it is difficult. Local advancement of disease, difficult. Level of inflammation, if inflammation is more, then again difficult. And lymphovascular invasion, if the lymphatics are involved, again it is a little bit difficult. So this is the extent of tumor. And other is underlying biology of tumor. So what is histologic grade of the cancer? We have already seen what is grade. Then what is the rate of proliferation? How fast the cells are duplicating or multiplying? And ERPR HER2, we have seen. If ERPR HER2 is positive, cancer is comparatively easy to treat. Now all this was modern medicine. All bird's eye view what modern medicine has information regarding breast cancer. Now let's come to our main topic, Ayurveda perspective. All these things, how we understand in our language is most important for us. So these were all observations which we have already seen, suggested by modern medicine. Now we have to do their transcription or interpretation in our language. But before that, a very basic question, why Ayurveda? In all this cancer treatment, there are many researches going on, millions, billions, trillions of dollars being spent. So what is the role of Ayurveda over there? So this is my explanation for this. Now this tumor of cancer is not a disease actually. This tumor is only a symptom. Because if tumor were the disease, then by operation, chemo, radiation, tumor is removed. Game over, disease finished. But it is not the end of the game. So that tendency to form that tumor again and again, it comes back after years on the same place or some different place. So tendency is the actual disease. And modern medicine is more concerned with tumor. Yes, they are also working on tendency, but more or less their more focus is to get rid of the tumor. And our Ayurveda understanding and Ayurveda literature is more concerned with tendency. So both of these things are important. So because of this reason, addition of Ayurveda is must in cancer treatment is my actually understanding explanation. Now how to interpret all those things? So by and large, kapha dominance from Ayurveda perspective, we described three humors, Vata, Pitta and Kapha, of which kapha dominance is always to be kept in mind, especially in case of breast cancer. Why? Because this tumor comes in upper body, and as per Ayurveda explanation, upper part of the body is kapha dominant and all those organs come under the kapha territory. Then it is a SOL, means space occupying lesion. It's a mass, collection of mass. And whenever there is collection, any type of collection, solid collection, then kapha is responsible for that. And the seat organ is a stana or breast. This is again a kapha sthana, stanya or rasa dhatu, upadhatu of rasa is stanya. And rasa is again kapha dominant. So because of all these reasons, breast cancer, we have to keep always in mind that it is definitely a Sannipati, all three doshas are involved, but especially kapha dominance we have to keep in mind. Now another thing was ductal or carcinoma or lobular. Now how to understand from Ayurveda perspective. Now duct is a type of shira or Stanyavaha shira, and as per Ayurveda understanding, shira developed from rakta. Asuruja Kandara shira sort of explanation is there. Now, so the principal dosha for ductal carcinoma is rakta. So kapha is the important dosha and rakta is the important dosha in any type of ductal carcinoma. Again, in case of rakta dhatu, it is mentioned that whenever rakta dhatu comes into picture, the disease becomes aggressive and poor prognosis. It is mentioned in Ayurveda. Shitoshna snigdha rukshadhay rupakranta ekada samyak sadhyana siddhanti rakta janstan vibhavai. So whatever the diseases, they do not respond to normal treatment, there always you have to think of Rakta involvement there. So Kapha dominant Vata Pitta dosha and Rakta dusha is the understanding for ductal carcinoma. For lobular, now stanya is formed from Rasa. So, and the lobules or glands are the actual place of formation of stanya. So principal dusha for lobular carcinoma is Rasa. And again, lobular cancers are less aggressive and comparatively better prognosis. So with this understanding, Kapha dominant dosha and Rasa is a dusha for lobular carcinoma, and this is very important for Ayurvedic physician to plan his or her treatment schedule. Now, one more point was there, invasive or non-invasive. If the cancer is invasive and the process of invasion will always need Tikshna, Sukshma and Chalaguna. So more Pitta and Vata dominance we have to keep in mind. So Kapha is there initially, but if it is invasive, then we have to think of Pitta and Vata as well, just next to Kapha dominance. And if it is non-invasive, then we can think it as a more Kapha dominant type of cancer. Then ERPR positive or negative was one more point explained by modern medicine. Now estrogen and progesterone are related to the process of menstruation. So if the hormonal receptors are present, then the role of vitiated Raja and Shukra needs to be considered in the Samprapti. So if ERPR is positive, we have more treatment option. We can treat Raja and Shukra as well. But if the hormone receptors are absent, then we need not think of any such type of Khavaigunya. Khavaigunya is a sort of lacuna. This is a word, Sanskrit word, mentioning some sort of lacuna in that particular tissue. So ERPR negative, there is no such type of lacuna. Grading, again, there were grades 1 to 3, where grade 1 means more resemblance to mother cell and grade 3 will mean no resemblance to the mother cell. So this resemblance or non-resemblance is understood as Vaishamya or Vishama Guna in Ayurveda. So if Vaishamya of this malignant cells is increasing, then this Vaishamya is attributed to Vata dosha. So if more is the Vaishamya, if grade 3 patient is there, then Vata dominance we have to keep in our mind. So if grade 1 is there, then less Vata dominance or more Kapha dominance we have to keep in mind. So higher the grade, then potent treatment for Vishama Guna of Vata we need to add in our treatment schedule. That is the importance of this observation from Ayurveda perspective. Staging, if the distant metastasis is already visible, then from Ayurveda perspective, we need to call them as a Gambhira Dhatugat Avastha. And again, it is in Ayurveda, it is called as Madhyama Marga. And Madhyama Marga diseases, they have bad or difficult prognosis and it gets poorer and poorer. It is said that Prayaspirya Gata Dosha Kleshayanta tu Ramstiram. So once the doshas go into the Madhyama Marga, the disease becomes a little bit difficult. So this is the understanding between the staging and Ayurveda fundamentals. So by and large, these are the doshas and dushas which are to be considered as a victims or culprits, you can say, for the formation of carcinoma, especially breast carcinoma. Kapha is the dosh on the top, then Vata Pitta depending upon the what is the condition. Rasa and Rakta are the dhatus or tissues. Rasa is comparable to, we can say, serum or plasma, and Rakta to RBCs. Not 100%, but just as a simile. Then Stanya Srotas as breast is the tissue. Then Raja or Artava means menstruation. It has definitive role in the formation of breast cancer. Shukra is the reproduction capacity of that individual. And Oja is the ultimate vigor which the person has. So all these things are getting vitiated to more or less extent. In clinic, we have to understand what is the level of vitiation of each and every part or compartment or component of this, and accordingly we have to plan our treatment. So if there are 10 breast cancer patients, it is not at all necessary that all the medicines will be same. In fact, all the medicines can be altogether different in all the different patients depending upon the taratamya, we call it as a less or more contribution of which factor is there. Accordingly, we change our medicine. So now let's come to treatment protocol. I am going to just give few names of medicines in different types of prevalent conditions, and again they have to be used by the expert. These medicine should not be tried on his or her own by the patient at her home. But all the assessment I have already mentioned, there is a lot of assessment to be done before telling the treatment. So these names are just for general information. So I have here again mentioned it. This is only after expert advice. You have to use it only after expert advice, not on your own. Anyway, Google is not a good teacher. Google is good for only for information. There are many things written on Google, but which thing is good for me and which thing is not good for me is not mentioned there. So it's for general information, it's okay, but don't try to apply all these things to yourself on your own. So mainly Vata dominant conditions, the Vata Shamak and medicines, again good for all these dusha. This Dashamula Arista is there. These bold ones are even more effective. So Jirakadya Arista is there, which contains cumin seed. This Dashamula Arista contains roots of 10 big herbs, which is a very magic medicine in Ayurveda, we can say. Then Bala Arista is also one good herb, and many other components, and the Asavarist or self-generated alcohol is prepared from all that. Gugul Tiktam Ghrutam is also very good drug of choice. Vidaryadi Ghrutam, Kashayam or decoction, and Ghruta, they are also available. Balaguduchadi is also one more combination which can be used. Then some Rasayana Kalpa has to be added to the treatment part. So they are generally contain Suvarna Bhasma and all other Bhasmas of heavy metals, we can say. So if they are prepared in very good manner, then they are really not that problematic. If they are not prepared properly, then yes, it can be a problem. So with due care, if a doctor wants to use with patient consent, he or she can use. So if the patient doesn't want or the doctor is not convinced, you may even drop this Rasayan Kalpa. For Vata dominant, Vata Brihadvat Chintamani Rasa is recommended, which contains gold and other things. For Pitta dominant condition, Chandana Sava is a drug of choice. Then Chandana is sandalwood. Then Dhatriadi Ghruta, Dhatri is Indian gooseberry, which is a queen of all tonic medicines in Ayurveda or Rasayan medicine, we can say. Phalasarpi Ghruta is also a very good combination for female genital system. Vidaryadi Ghruta is very good. Drakshadi Kashaya, Draksha is grapes. The medicine prepared from that is also very good. Again, this Rasayana Kalpa containing some gold. For Pitta dominant disorders, Vasanta Kusumakar is one such combination. Again, the same thing, it contains heavy metals. So if the person is okay with it and doctor is okay, then only you can go ahead. For Kapha dominant, again, there are few herbs or few combinations. Pippalya, Sava, Kumari. Kumari is aloe vera. Or Vacha Haridradi, Haridra is Curcuma longa or curcumin. So accordingly, this can be used. How to plan treatment? This Roga Pariksha and Rogi Pariksha we have to do. We have to go through reports. Reports will tell the severity of disease, clinical history of present illness, then past treatment history, what patient has taken treatment, and current clinical condition. So these are the things. Now we come to our last part, which is preventive oncology, which is good for all the population. Who needs it most? So all need this preventive oncology. Why? Because everyone is vulnerable in today's scenario. How to do it? Drug, diet and lifestyle. And when you have to practice it throughout life, especially after 40 years of age. And especially in breast cancer, how to do it? Self breast examination, mammography periodically, then watch for any changes, sudden changes, abrupt changes in menstruation pattern, and drug, diet and lifestyle, especially peri and postmenopausal women or genetic predisposition. Self breast examination, you have to do observation and palpation. How to do it? So these are the things which need to be observed: nipple discharge, lump or thickening, visible lump, dimpling, skin texture, armpit pain, then pulled in nipple and skin irritation. We have seen all these. How to do that? Observation: stand in front of mirror. There should not be any clothing on upper body part. Watch for change in size, shape, symmetry, inflammation, rash, or watch your nipple, whether it is inverted, retracted, if there is any bleeding or discharge, unusual swelling in axilla. Then raise hand behind the head and observe this thing again. And again, keep hands on the waist and observe again all these things. So this is observation. Here in palpation, lie on back. Palpation never to be done in erect posture because the tissue will get spread when you lie down, and palpation will be easy. So keep a roll towel below your neck, then hand up below the head of the side which breast is to be examined. Then use pads of 3 fingers, never fingertips. You have to use these pads, never the tips. And palpate gently but firmly all over the breast, whether there is any lump is palpable. Also palpate the nipples. Mammography, there are 2 types, sonomammography and X-ray mammography. Get it done time to time with your suggestion of your doctor, maybe once a year or once in 2 years, like that. Watch for any change in menstruation, any change in pattern, frequency, quality, quantity, and pre or post menopausal symptoms. If a lady was not having any low abdominal ache or low back ache before menstruation, but suddenly it has started, so get it sorted out. So stay as much as away from hormonal treatments. Try to avoid as much as possible. Just go for it only if it is absolutely necessary. And drug, diet, lifestyle, there are few recommended drugs after permission from your Ayurvedic physician, especially for Vata Prakriti people, Giloy or Amruta, Tynospora cordifolia can be consumed. For Pitta dominant people, Kumari or aloe vera, and Amla, Emlica officinalis can be consumed. And for Kapha dominant, Haridra or Curcuma longa can be used. Periodic Panchakarma or body cleansing should be done, especially for the ladies of higher risk category. For diet to follow, you have to have simple diet, not very much highly processed thing, whole wheat, green gram, red lentil, all fruit vegetables, then salad, this type of radish, cucumber, carrot you can have, cow milk, ghee, butter, buttermilk is recommended. Then boiled egg or chicken soup if a lot of craving for non-veg. Then semolina, red millet, cumin, fenugreek seeds can be consumed. Sufficient water intake during meal, around 300 ml as per Ayurveda guidelines, and total 1.5 to 2 liter water per day. Dry fruits like almonds and dates can be consumed in a moderate quantity. Better to avoid is whatever is liked by tongue. 80% or 90% of the things are not good for your health. So tur dal, chickpeas, potato, sweet potato things, then thick fruits like banana, custard apple, which are kapha dominant, should be avoided. Curd, yogurt, cheese again, kapha dominant, better to avoid. Non-veg, especially red meat, better to be avoided. Fermented food, junk food, fast food, pizza, burger, pasta, this, that, better to be avoided. Deep fried, heavily processed, avoided. Pre-cooked because it contains lot of preservatives, better to avoid, or very little quantity we can say. Very excessive or very less water should be not practiced, and minimal oil intake. Around half a liter oil per month per person should be the quantity of oil to be used. In lifestyle, regular eating habits, moderate food volume at a time, not very heavy diet or very less diet at one time. Only 2 to 3 times in a day on a regular timing. No munching, just going and coming, eating some small things should be avoided. Regular sleep, no daytime sleep and no awake night. Regular moderate exercise, especially yoga and pranayama, meditation. Special care and hygiene during menstruation, it is generally overlooked nowadays. But as far as possible, rest is necessary during those 4 days. I have heard that few countries have given now menstrual holidays for 4 days of menstruation. In few countries, women are given holidays. If it's a real thing, it's a welcome sign. And self-examination is better to practice in our lifestyle. So these are the references where from all this information has come, especially Bruhatrayi are our granthas of Charak, Sushruta, Vagbhat, which are the pioneers of Ayurveda, and all other information is taken from different literature from modern medicine. So thank you very much. I hope I am in time. And thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to present my views in front of you. And if there are any queries, please, Thakkar sir, over to you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Nimbalkar, for your great, insightful presentation. May I now request Vaidya Harish Verma to moderate our Q&A session. Over to you, Dr. Verma.
Thank you, Stacy. Dr. Nimbalkar ji, it was a fantastic presentation. I am hopeful our all viewers may have understood the modern as well as the Ayurvedic concepts regarding breast cancer or the management of breast cancer in Ayurveda. I have a few questions.
Thank you very much.
My first question,
Yes.
my first question is, when a person can think of starting Ayurvedic treatment when the person get diagnosed? Suppose if the person is in grade 2 or grade 3 of cancer and recently diagnosed, can they start Ayurvedic treatment right way, or they can start allopathic treatment, or they can think of surgery, chemo, radiation, and Ayurvedic treatment? Please let us know. What is your experience about it?
So very nice question, sir, and everyone has this query in their mind. What happens is earlier the better. Whenever you want to start Ayurvedic treatment, earlier the better. Whenever the patient comes, the treatment should be started. But we never say that modern medicine or modern treatment is not at all necessary. So it is necessary at the same time. So both the things can go hand in hand. We are treating and our medicines change. If a patient is undergoing chemotherapy, then we give some different medicines so that patient tolerates the chemotherapy well. And actually what happens is our Rasayana medicines, which are rejuvenating or tonic type of medicine, what they do is they prepare a protective cover towards the healthy tissue. Now what happens, chemotherapy drug is called as cytotoxic therapy. It's a scientific name is cytotoxic. So cyt means cell and toxic means poison. So it's a poison for cell, for malignant cell. So the chemotherapy drug will kill the malignant cell. But at the same time what happens, it kills some healthy cells also. And as the healthy cells are getting killed, then side effects are visible. So now if our treatment is going hand in hand with modern medicine, what happens is our medicines protect the healthy cells. Because of that, side effects are getting reduced. This is one thing. And another thing was the chemotherapy drug was getting wasted in killing the healthy cells. Now as the healthy cells are being protected, then this medicine kills the malignant cells to more extent. So chemotherapy becomes more effective. Again, this is a hypothesis. We are doing research on it, and in few months or years, we'll try to publish a paper on that. I don't have robust data for that, but this is only observation, and the patients who take chemo and Ayurvedic treatment or radiation Ayurvedic treatment together, so they get good results in that. So Ayurvedic treatment can be started. The basic answer of your question is Ayurvedic treatment can be started at any point of time. The medicines will change as per the avastha or the stage of the patient. If all chemo radiation has been finished and there is no evidence of cancer in that patient right now, again Ayurvedic treatment can be given for its general quality of life and prolong or prevent the recurrence of that cancer. So Ayurvedic treatment generally we give full treatment for 2 years and then slowly reduce and again give treatment for 2 further years. And afterwards only 1 or 2 Rasayan or tonic type of medicine for next 2-3 years, and we just follow up the patient. Anyway, oncologist is also following up the patient and they show very good progress in them.
And sir, and the people who are survivors of cancer, breast cancer, what home remedies they can take at their home? Who are survivors, like who have taken chemotherapy or surgery or even Ayurvedic medicines and now they are surviving. And what are the home remedies, what they can do at their home?
In home remedies, in my presentation also I had presented this. Now it's more like a Indian type. I don't have any idea how much they are available in Canada or rest of the world. But this fenugreek seeds, means methi, in India we call it as a methi beans. The seeds of the methi plant, they are good. Then cumin seeds, they are also very good because they are called as Garbhashay Vishodhan. They have good action on Garbhashay or reproductive system. So indirectly, estrogen we can say. Then Giloy or Guduchi is a world famous example. It can be consumed. Then Haridra in some conditions. Yes, turmeric latte is very much famous nowadays everywhere all over the world due to COVID. So this turmeric latte is also very good home remedy, we can say. And there are many other spices like dalchini is there. It can be taken in small quantities daily. But again, it depends upon the prakriti or constitution of that particular individual, and accordingly the dosage or this anupan means the vehicle with which these medicines are to be taken needs to be decided. So better to take one consultation from some Ayurveda expert and then the patient can start it. It's definitely true that Ayurveda medicine doesn't have any side effect or any untoward effect, but still there is one star or conditions apply for that. So if it is appropriate for that person, if it is appropriate, then yes, definitely it will not cause any harm or any trouble. But if the medicine is not appropriate for that person, then it may cause some untoward effect, but we cannot call it as a side effect as such. So one consultation from one expert, and then he or she can tell, okay, Haridra is good for you, or curcumin is good for you, so you can start, or cumin seed is good for you, you can start accordingly. And once it is okay, then they can really consume for months or years together. There is definitely not any problem.
Thank you, sir. We are getting many questions. Srishi, we will answer separately through email because of time constraint. We cannot ask many questions now. Over to Srishi.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Verma. Yes, absolutely. We are almost closer to our time here. Thank you, Dr. Nimbalkar, for your very, very insightful, very thoughtful presentation. And objective of the Canada India Foundation by promoting along with our partner organization is to that how we can integrate modern science with our, time proven ancient Ayurveda philosophy of good health. So I think your presentation spoke on in itself of what the benefit we can gain by integrating some of the ideas kind of written in through ages in Ayurveda and along with the modern medicine. And the objective is that how we can bring up that awareness. And if you could quite quickly share maybe a minute or so that how it is being kind of experienced in India, the modern medicine, all these allopathic doctors, how's their receptivity on Ayurveda? Because that's very key until unless willingness from the both side comes, and any patient who's going through this kind of a challenge, they rely on their experts' advice, and they come at a very crossroad that which way to go, whether Ayurveda or modern or together. I think everybody wants to follow some kind of an integrated medicine model, but they always get kind of a dependent upon their expert advice. So how is the receptivity in India, and what can be done to increase or enhance that receptivity in this part of the world as well? If you could kindly share that.
Okay. So this is a really very burning issue, sir. You rightly point out the thing. What happens is nowadays the picture is slowly changing, but many times modern oncologists, they are a bit reluctant, we can say, to advise simultaneous Ayurvedic treatment for that. But I won't say they are doing something wrong, because everyone takes a decision as per his or her individual experience. So it's again our duty at the same time to show that yes, we people are not like quack doctors or something. We are doing unscientific things. We also have some insight regarding cancer, and we really try to help the patient. But once, this is my now personal experience, once those doctors are convinced that yes, with this treatment patient is really getting benefited, then they refer the patient to us. Now in my individual practice, I get most of the references in my practice come from modern oncologist people. They are very few, no doubt, But yes, once they are getting convinced, so many times few mistakes may occur from our side as well, because we are not that very much keen towards documentation. So once we have to document and show it in a documented manner that see these were the metastases previously, now this is the result after 3 months, 6 months, whatever, or this was the quality of life previously and now it is a quality of life. There are worldwide standard questionnaires for quality of life by EORTC. It's a European Organization for Research and Treatment in Cancer, EORTC. So they have prepared a nice questionnaire for that. So if we maintain that questionnaire and we show on document that our medicine has definitely helped, and again not in an anecdotal way, but in a large way, that 100, 500 cases of this type of patient, they are doing really very good. If Ayurveda is added, I am not saying Ayurveda should replace the modern medicine. As on today, it is not really very possible that only Ayurveda helps the patient to that extent. But yes, if these two go hand in hand, this one and one of allopathy and one of Ayurveda, will not make it two. It will make 11. And it will be very much helpful finally for the patient. So I would say both the fraternities from Ayurveda part as well as from the modern medicine part, if they put 1 foot forward or 1 step forward, it will be a huge benefit for the mankind. So that is my personal individual thinking.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Nimbalkar. And I must say that at Canada India Foundation level, along with our partner organization, we are partnering with UHN. We have created a research fund of $1 million to integrate modern medicine with the Ayurvedic practices, along with the All India Institute of Ayurveda. The objective is the same, that how we can bring out evidence-based outcome so that more and more acceptability of this integrated medicine can take place. Dr. Verma, before I invite Ritesh for the concluding, you wanted to say something.
Yes, Sriji, I want to add one more point, which is very important. In India, many allopathic doctors, they are reluctant in telling patient or in prescribing any effective Ayurvedic medicine because of some legal issues. Because if they prescribe Ayurvedic medicine on their letterhead, then they get notice from the Indian Medical Council, because Indian Medical Council tell them that this is not in their scope of practice. This is very important point. Many of my friends, they always tell us that your medicines are very effective, they are very safe for long-term use, but they are helpless because that medicine does not come in their scope of practice. I have written to Government of India that some of the basic herbs should be allowed to all practitioners of medicines, including Ayurvedic, homeopathic, allopathic. All practitioners, they can use some of the herbs which are particularly used in our kitchen, like turmeric, like ashwagandha, giloy, tulsi, amla, hardra. All these herbs I have written. Let us see. But right now, this is a major issue. That is why allopathic doctors are reluctant in prescribing certain Ayurvedic medicines. Thank you.
No, that I can see that, a vision of having a clinical setting where you have a modern medicine doctor along with Ayurvedic doctor together, sitting in one clinic and bringing out a very holistic approach to the human health. Ritesh, over to you for the concluding remark.
Just a minute. Just I wanted to add. Just now, sir said that one Ayurvedic doctor and one allopathy doctor. And this is the setup for last 20 or 30 years, since 1994 at our Wagholi Center. With Dr. Sardeshmukh from Ayurveda part and Dr. Arvind Kulkarni, he is a radiation oncologist, very senior. And they together check the patient from their perspective. And hand in hand, that project is going on for so many years and very successfully. So this was a really very nicely pointed out, sir. And this should be a practice all over the India or all over the world maybe. Thank you very much.
And I hope, Dr. Nimbalkar, that any evidence or any experience of that almost 2 decades of practicing together should be shared and more, promoted among the vast or community members, or even in the healthcare professionals, so that more encouragement to the this integrated medicine. Ritesh, over to you.
Thank you, Satish ji. Thank you very much, Dr. Ranjit Nimbalkar ji, for your very well-informed and interactive presentation on Ayurvedic management of breast cancer. As we know that this is emerging as one of the most common health issues among women across the globe. As we are also aware that with the introduction of new technologies and innovative ideas, researchers and healthcare professionals use what they learn from research studies to develop better practices that will help prevent and treat breast cancer. They are also looking for ways to improve the quality of life of people with breast cancer. To complement the modern research and health remedies, India's traditional time-tested Ayurvedic healthcare system can provide alternate solutions. A qualified Ayurveda practitioners can diagnose the cancer from an Ayurvedic perspective. They can prescribe and give Ayurvedic remedies and treatments. I would also like to thank our special guest today, Ms. Shipra Verma ji, Chief Electoral Officer of Manitoba, for joining us on Sunday morning. A special thanks to all the virtual audiences for their constant interest and support to the CIF initiative. We welcome your suggestions, rational analysis, and recommendations to make the series more beneficial for you. Also, I would like to thank our partners, Canadian Ayurvedic Practitioners Association, led by Dr. Harish Verma ji, Vedic Spiritual Heritage Foundation, and Consulate General of India to support this initiative. Also, thanks to Y Media for covering this program live. Friends, please stay in tune for our next webinar on Ayurvedic management of nasobronchial allergic disorders on Sunday, 5th September 2021. Our expert speaker for this session would be Dr. Pawan Madan from India. Please stay connected, stay safe, stay healthy, and wish you a very happy Raksha Bandhan once again. Thank you. Namaste.